Quinlan Vex leaned against the rough-hewn table, absently fiddling with a chipped mug, its blue glaze faded by time. He could hear the nervous rustle of his friends around him, each of them caught in their own whirlwind of emotions. Fiora Lease stood a few feet away, her arms crossed tightly against her chest, a contrast to the vibrancy she usually exuded. Her fingers tapped rhythmically against her bicep as she watched Quinlan. The warmth of a fire crackled nearby, but here, in their miniature universe of fear and uncertainty, an unnerving chill lingered. "I just don't see why you insist on taking the lead all the time, Quinlan," she said, her voice sharper than intended, as she gestured to the darkness beyond the windows. "We should be a team, not follow whatever brave idea you concoct. You're not invincible." Quinlan's jaw clenched, the light reflecting off of his blue eyes, while an uncharacteristic regret shadowed his features. "I'm not trying to be invincible. Someone has to keep all of you safe. You think I want to be in charge? I'm terrified too." Across the room, their friend Mason, a goofball hero in his own right, coughed loudly, attempting to diffuse the tension. "Hey, team, remember the last ghost story? Bigfoot's probably scared off by now." "Shut up, Mason," Fiora snapped back, then quickly softened, her voice tumbling down like an unexpected rain. "I just can't stand the thought of losing any more people. Not like last time." A deep silence enveloped them, heavy with unspoken memories. Quinlan's gaze fell, remembering the ache lodged within him, his own friend lost during a ghost hunt gone tragically wrong. He swallowed hard, a knot forming in his throat. He wanted so badly to reassure Fiora, to shield her from nightmares of their own fabrications turned horrifying reality. "Fiora," he finally said, lifting his head to meet her piercing gaze. "I get it. I'm fighting my own ghosts here too, but we have to face this together. You know that." Just then, the cabin door creaked loudly, a reminder that the real horror of the night still lurked just outside. The group fell into hushed uncertainty. All eyes darted towards the sound. The laughter faded, swallowed by an unseen tide of fear. Brenna, always the skeptic at heart, interjected with a teasing tone. "If it's a ghost, I'm pretty sure it's just here for happy hour." Fiora couldn't help but smile through the tension, shaking her head at Brenna's levity. "Maybe it's a party-loving spirit who prefers dancing to hauntings?" "Ha! Freelance ghost tours!" Mason chimed in with exaggerated enthusiasm, unwilling to let the gravity of the moment crush his upbeat spirit. "We'll give them cocktails." "Enough of that," Quinlan said, cutting through the levity, his voice betraying a gripping tension. He straightened up, fists planted on the table. "Stop joking around. This isn't a game at all." That resonant truth hung between them, heavy and unforgiving. Fiora took a hesitant step forward, her voice softening as she spoke. "Quinlan, I don't want to lose you. Not again." In that suspended moment, the world around them faded. The lingering tension slipped away, replaced by something more profound, an unshakable understanding. Fiora took another step, her hand brushing against Quinlan's as she searched his eyes, searching for clarity amid confusion. I love you, Quinlan." The air shifted, a quiet explosion of emotion surged as Quinlan reeled from her words. The simplest declaration ignited a storm within him, unveiling a truth he'd long kept buried. No longer could he ignore the yearning that had blossomed amidst the chaos and fear. "Fiora, he hesitated, and the flickering lantern guided him. But before he could finish, a distant, hollow howl cut through the air, echoing their unyielding fears. The laughter and warmth had dissolved into disarray. The entity outside, sensing the bond forged in those earnest moments, stirred in response. Shadows encroached, mingling with the realization that love, in its most potent form, could intertwine with danger, shattering their calm before the coming storm. "Everyone, stay close," Quinlan urged, the playful spirit within him hardened, setting his jaw. "Whatever it is, we face it together." As the shadows whispered around them, they stood ready to confront the unknown, knowing that love might just be the only shield they had left. Scene 64. The entity's downfall. The air trembled with an electric tension, the oppressive humidity clinging to skin, reminiscent of the suffocating dread that loomed over their group. A distant rumble of thunder echoed, amplifying the mounting sense of urgency. "We can't keep dancing around this." Quinlan's voice cut through the thickening gloom, his brow furrowed. "You know that calling it gently won't get us anywhere, Fiora." Fiora leaned against the jagged stone wall of the abandoned manor, her fingers grazing the cold surface. Shadows danced in the flickering light of their lantern as the wind howled mournfully outside. "I'm not dancing around anything. It's just—" She took a shaky breath. "You don't see what's right in front of you." Nearby, Clara, one of their friends with tousled copper hair, fidgeted, her voice rising uncharacteristically. "Guys, can we focus? The entity is on our heels. Arguing about feelings is not going to save us." "You think we can just talk about it when we're surrounded by vengeful spirits?" Riley added, his arms crossed defiantly. His skepticism made it clear he feared their unity was lacking. "What's the plan here? Split up again? That didn't go so well last time." The air crackled with friction as the group struggled to maintain cohesion in the growing chaos. Monica, who had been studying ancient protective rituals until late into the night, interjected, "I've unearthed a potential protective chant. We just need focus and trust." But Quinlan, fueled by the urgency, shot her a look. "Like we were also focused when we woke the monster? We need to." He paused, shifting his gaze to Fiora. "Rituals and tokens don't replace real connections. We need to confront our fears together or it doesn't matter." Fiora, her cheeks flushed with exertion, squared her shoulders. "I assure you I'm ready to face anything, even you. Can you say the same?" The tension shifted palpably, the interior of the manor reflecting their inner turmoil. The wallpaper peeled in strips, mimicking the unraveling of their emotional facades. Quinlan took a step closer. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, the tension coiling around them anew. "It's not about us fighting. This isn't a singular drama." "Then stop treating it like a joke," Fiora exploded, her hands slicing through the air. "You think that your bravado is going to shield me? You think you're protecting me when I need you?" Her voice broke, echoing with a raw intensity. A frigid gust swept through the room, rattling dust-draped chandeliers, and Clara gasped, clutching her arms as if to ward off an invisible chill. Quinlan's expression softened, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. "I don't know how to be that person. I messed up, Fiora. I can't lose another friend." There was a profound silence as Fiora searched his eyes, her anger subsiding into something gentler. "We're all scared, Quinlan, but we can't keep pretending our trust doesn't matter. If we don't face this together, like you said—" She hesitated. "You can't lose me. I won't let fear tear us apart." As storm clouds gathered outside, their voices shifted from volatile arguments toward a poignant understanding. "Then we invoke the chant together," Quinlan said resolutely, the fire rekindling in his gaze. "All of us. And whatever happens, we face it as a team," Clara chimed in, placing her small hand on Quinlan's shoulder, offering her silent support. Riley stepped forward, his arms dropping to his sides, ready to embrace unity. "I'm in." They formed a circle, moving closer, their bodies reflecting an unspoken promise. The lantern flickered, threatening to extinguish. The air thickened with the weight of their mutual fears, the distant howl of the storm harmonizing with their anxiety. Fiora felt a newfound strength in that circle, a cocoon forged from shared vulnerabilities. In that interlude of silence, Fiora clasped Quinlan's hand firmly, their fingers intertwining with both resolve and unspoken affection. It was an acknowledgement that the love they buried could also become their strength. "Whatever this entity is," she breathed, her voice steady, "we're stronger standing together." "Together," Quinlan echoed, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that mingled with friendship, affection, and an understanding far beyond. As they prepared to face the wrath of the entity, the thunder cracked loudly overhead, resonating through the walls. But deep within the heart of their gathering, the flicker of hope remained, unyielding amid the darkness. Scene 65, the aftermath of battle. The air clung to the skin like a damp blanket, heavy with the scent of charred wood and ash, remnants of the campfire that once brought warmth and laughter. Quinlan Vex stared into the embers, their faint glow echoing the rawness in his chest. Night cloaked the forest in shadows deeper than before, the oppressive silence broken only by the distant rustle of leaves, whispering secrets he wished to forget. He felt as if the very trees mourned for the souls they had lost. Fiora Lise sat beside him, her shoulders tense, a stark contrast to her usual effervescent nature. Her laughter, once bright as the dawn, felt like a distant memory now. She played with the frayed edge of her sweater, her fingers trembling slightly as her gaze flicked between the darkened woods and Quinlan. Do you think, do you think it's really over? She dared break the silence, voice low but filled with an urgency that made Quinlan turn, his dark eyes searching hers. We can't know for sure. His voice, usually teeming with jest, emerged like a ghost, a shadow of its former self. Quinlan's mind raced through the night's events, tethered to the memory of the malevolent entity unleashed, its haunting presence still echoing through the marrow of his bones. But I can't shake off this feeling. He let the thought hang, unsure of whether to voice it. Near the edge of the flickering radius of the campfire, Mia and Nico sat huddled together, their expressions reflecting a shared grief. The metallic tang of blood still lingered in their nostrils, a bitter reminder of the sacrifice they witnessed. Mia's eyes glistened, raw and unfiltered. Nico, she murmured, what if we were not meant to live? Nico ran a thumb over his bottom lip, a habit he developed during moments of deep thought. We are. We have to be. We could still find a way to undo this somehow, maybe. Maybe we can appease it. He glanced at the sky, where the stars flickered like a dying hope. Something must work. Quinlan's heart sank at the helplessness in the air, and he felt it, a tightening, a pull, as if the very universe were conspiring against them. He turned back to Fiora, whose face now wore a mask of determination. We can't let that thing win. We owe it to Sasha. Her voice broke slightly, clinging to the name of their fallen friend like a lifeline. I'll do whatever it takes, Quinlan promised, clenching his fists, resolve simmering beneath the surface. But this time, we do it together. As if summoned by his words, Jace appeared out of the shadows, his usually confident demeanor replaced by a haunted gaze. Together? What about when the thing descends upon us again? Do we scatter like scared rabbits, or do we stand and fight? His words dripped with bitterness, the emotional aftermath scattering across his once loyal friendship with Quinlan. Are you really suggesting we abandon hope? Quinlan spat, the hurt flashing through him, intensifying his grief. What do you expect? After all we've witnessed? Losing Sasha, it makes survival seem pointless, Jace shot back, his voice a hissing ember of the arguments they had shared throughout their shared past. Don't you dare minimize what we've been through. Quinlan snapped, the palpable tension thickening as blisters of anger erupted, fueled by the fear that gripped them all. Fiora, sensing the fracture that threatened to deepen, stood. Stop! We can't afford to fight each other right now. Her voice rose like a clarion call, enveloping them in her radiant energy. Let's honor Sasha's memory instead. Across the clearing, Ellie stepped up, finally emerging from the shadows, her stern demeanor conflicting with the vulnerability that flickered beneath. You think she'd want us blaming ourselves like this? She isn't the reason we're alive. She's the reason we need to fight for ourselves. Mia pressed a hand against her heart, tears shimmering in her eyes. Then how do we honor her? What do we do? They fell into a hushed silence, the questions weighing down on them like boulders. One by one, they exchanged glances, a moment of grounding that swelled into something bigger, building silently until it simmered. Together, Jace murmured, softer now, vulnerability rising as he extended his hand tentatively toward Quinlan. Let's figure this out together. Fiora stepped between them, a melting bridge of hope. Whatever it takes. Under the starlit sky, shimmers of resolve began to tether them together. They were bruised, haunted, and uncertain, but they were not broken. In a world stripped of laughter and light, with shadows lingering far too close, they embraced their path ahead, scarcely aware that the true horror had yet to unveil and what awaited them in the impending darkness. Scene 66. Healing together. Out on the windswept balcony of the old cabin, the air was thick with silence. Quinlan leaned against the railing, overlooking the darkened pines, as if they might murmur secrets if he stared long enough. The evening sun painted the horizon in muted purples and deep blues, a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos that had unfolded hours before. His heart pounded in his chest, not from the remnants of fear, but from the sickening weight of guilt. Quinn, Fiora called softly, her voice barely breaking the quivering stillness. He turned to face her, the sight of her gentle figure bathed in the soft glow of twilight, urging him to confront the thick fog gathering in his mind. Are you okay? She asked, stepping closer. The vulnerability in her expression struck him, Though they had been through hell, the cracks showed in the brave facade she wore, like armor. I will be. Quinlan rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling slowly as if deflating an invisible balloon of tension. He watched her gaze drift back to the woods, where something lingered in the dusk fear, or perhaps memories too painful to articulate. Just then, Amelia burst onto the balcony, hair wild and eyes wide, as if she too had wrestled with the very specter they tried to escape. Did anyone find the flashlights? They were right here, she said, the frantic energy in her voice stumbling over each word like an avalanche that refused to settle. Amelia, what are you? Fiora began, but the rising panic cut through the atmosphere before she could finish. I'm not staying here to wait for whatever dragged us into this nightmare, Amelia insisted, almost shouting. The air thickened as she realized how loud she was. The words hung like a shroud, and silence embraced them again. Quinlan stepped forward, breaking the freezing tension. We have to stick together. That's non-negotiable. The fierceness in his tone echoed the need for unity that had begun to resonate deeper within them. Just then, across the room from where they stood, Oliver, cracking jokes and trying to lighten the mood, honed in on their conflict. Look, whatever creepy thing just tried to eat us is probably off plotting its next move. We need to plan, folks, not devolve into a sitcom. His lips curled into a playful smirk that clashed with the severe gravity in the air. Leaning against the doorframe, Janine gave Oliver a withering look and said, "This isn't a game, Oliver. We're not in a sitcom. We're trying to survive here." Concern laced her tone, threading through the comedy with an urgency that every round of laughter had begun to dull. A shiver passed through Fiora as she took in everyone's faces, connecting the fear and determination woven into each glance. "There's got to be a way to fight back," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. She instinctively reached for Quinlan's arm, grounding herself with the contact that felt electric vital. Quinlan caught her movement, squeezing her hand gently. "We'll find it," he promised, a resolve igniting within them both. Together. Nearby, Amelia wiped a tear from her cheek, the fleeting softness evaporating beneath the looming tension. "If we don't act, then what? We just wait our turns." Her voice trembled, abandoning bravado for raw honesty. "It's not about waiting it out. It's about finding out what we can do," Fiora replied, stepping away from Quinlan and turning to face the others. "These spirits, whatever they are, they're not going to stop just because we're scared." From the shadows emerged Lucas, his fingers raking through his tousled hair. "I think the legends mentioned protection spells," he said, his voice low but tinged with excitement. "We could try to find something, anything. Or we could dig deeper and awaken something worse," Janine countered, a spark of fear igniting within her. The group exchanged looks, the weight of her words resounding louder than any scream. "It's dangerous, but so is doing nothing," Fiora said, intensity flickering in her gaze. "We just need to make sure we don't lose each other again." A silence enveloped them, their collective breaths uniting in the cool dusk air. Each heartbeat served as a whispered promise. Who they were before was now buried under the weight of the entity that haunted them. But right here, amidst uncertainty, a newfound strength began to unfurl, gently stitching together their fractured souls. "Then it's decided," Quinlan said, drawing on the quiet resolve around them. "Let's find a way to confront this thing together." In the deepening twilight, they formed a tight circle, hands clasped, bravery simmering just below the surface. Each face illuminated not just with fear, but with a flicker of hope, the essence of survival pulsing in their intertwined bond. As the wind swept through the trees, rustling the leaves into a haunting whisper, Quinlan caught Fiora's gaze, an unspoken connection rippling between them like tendrils of light in the shadows. "Together," she echoed, confidence blossoming under the weight of their shared fears. In that moment, they became a tapestry of resilience ready to face whatever darkness waited just beyond the candlelight. Scene 67, Reflections on Loss. The old cabin creaked against the chill of the night, shadows flickering like ghosts around the flickering fire. The embers glowed, illuminating the faces of the weary friends gathered closely, their eyes reflecting a palpable heaviness. An uneasy silence settled amongst them, a barrier of grief they were all on the verge of breaking through. Quinlan sat on a worn log, arms wrapped around his knees, the fire casting dancing shadows on his face. He gazed into the flames, his spotlight on the flickering heat pulling him from the dark recesses of memory into a conscious recognition of loss. Suddenly, Fiora broke the stillness, her voice a soft murmur. "Do you remember when we first heard the stories about the old lighthouse?" She leaned closer to the fire, her fingers tracing patterns in the dirt as if conjuring up the past. "We were terrified, but we couldn't resist exploring." "Yeah," Quinn chuckled, but it was tinged with pain. "I insisted we'd be fine, even after we lost that stupid flashlight." The memory sank deep into his gut. It felt like a betrayal to laugh, tethered to the grief they carried. "Michael laughed so hard he dropped his phone in the water," added Jess, another friend, sitting on the opposite side of the flickering flames. She appeared to smile at the recollection, yet the light faded from her eyes. "He had to swim after it. He said it was worth it just to see your face." "There was nothing worth it about my face in that moment," Quinlan said, forcing a grin. "My dignity was drowning right alongside that phone." "Oh, please," Darian interjected, shaking his head. "You're still the same dork who waded in after it. How are you going to blame anyone else?" The laughter that followed was hollow, stunted by the looming reminder of their absent friends. Fiora's eyes turned misty as she caught Quinlan's gaze. "We could have lost anyone that day. What if? What if we hadn't gone there?" She lowered her voice, her heart aching under the weight of what could have been. "What if we still had Michael?" The fire flickered ominously, almost as if the universe was listening. The shadows on the wooden walls of the cabin shifted, amplifying the sense of dread that hung like a thick fog. Quinlan inhaled deeply, the acrid scent of smoke lacing the air. He was painfully aware that they had faced real darkness before, yet the gnawing fear of the entity outside clawed at him more than any ghost story ever could. "Each story we told tonight, those are memories," Quinn said quietly, capturing Fiora's gaze once again. "We are never really going to lose them if we keep telling these tales." "Not everyone would agree," Jess remarked slightly sharply. "Not everyone has the same weight of loss to carry," she remarked, a shadow creeping in as she wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "What has your mom been saying?" Fiora pressed gently, knowing Jess had been wrestling with family expectations. "Nothing I can share," Jess replied, her voice strained. "You know how it is." The others nodded, a shared understanding permeating the circle. They may not have known Jess's family intimately, but grief had played its role in their lives, stringing them all together in a way that felt unbreakable yet frail all at once. Michael's absence was louder among them than ever. With every shared memory, the pang of longing grew sharper. The loss felt larger than any of them could comprehend. They were still here, in this moment, together. But for how long? Fiora's thought lingered, her face alight with determination. What if we honor them? Not just by recalling the memories, but by actively standing against whatever is out there, Fiora proposed, her passion igniting the air like a spark among dry leaves. "If we're going to survive this, we owe it to them to fight back." Quinlan leaned in. "You think we can confront it? The entity didn't care for anyone's memories." "Maybe," Fiora said, her eyes blazing with resolve. "But if it likes to toy with our grief, it doesn't understand the power of our friendship. Those stories, they connect us." Silence enveloped them again, heavy and expectant, yet somehow fortified. They were bound together by more than loss. There was a flicker of hope amidst their shared sorrow. And in their hearts, each held a fierce determination kindled by love, collective, unyielding, a bond that even death could not sever. As the fire crackled, Quinlan found solace in Fiora's steady gaze. "You're right," he murmured, breathing in deeply, the warmth of that idea thawing the chill in his bones. "Together, we're more than a target, we're a force." Staring into the flames, they let their grief transform into a silent pledge, an understanding that while the past haunted them, the uncharted dangers ahead were yet to be faced together. It was the ghosts of their memories that would propel them forward. Scene 68, Bonds Renewed. A midnight chill seeped through the thin walls of the old cabin, spiraling around the flickering orange glow of the campfire outside. The rough texture of the wooden floor, worn from years of gathering a motley crew of adventure seekers, seemed to pulse with a history of secrets. Quinlan Vex sat cross-legged, his fingers anxiously tracing the edge of a half-empty bottle of soda as laughter echoed around him. He could almost feel the weight of the memories pressing in. Those tantalizing moments with Fiora, moments he was always too quick to cover with quips. Who knew Roy could actually tell a ghost story? Fiora shouted, her laughter bubbling over the sound of crackling twigs. She threw her head back, her dark hair spilling over her shoulders in chaotic waves. The firelight danced off her freckled cheeks, painting them in warmth. Quinlan caught her smile, a sun-kissed beam that cut through the increasing darkness settling in his heart. Quinlan leaned in, adopting a conspiratorial tone. Yeah, maybe his entire life has been a ghost story. Did you see how pale he went when he mentioned the old mill? As Fiora burst into laughter, the rest of the group erupted into a chorus of conflicting tales and opinions about Roy, each one contrasting sharply with the shadows gathering just outside their circle of light. Yet, beneath the laughter, Quinlan felt a shift in the air, a tension, both thrilling and suffocating. This community of friends, once vibrant, now felt fragile in the haunting aftermath of their ill-fated exploration. The haunted mill, the whispers of an ancient being, every flicker of a shadow now carried a weight heavier than fear. Fiora glanced at him, catching the shift in his demeanor. "What's on your mind, Quinn? You look like you just saw a ghost yourself." "I'm just thinking," he responded, his voice lower, more tethered to the truth than the playful banter that had filled the air. "Shouldn't we really be embracing the spooky spirit instead of dwelling on the past? I mean..." She swept her arms wide, motioning to their eclectic gathering. "We're all alive, right? So we should make the most of it." A momentary silence swallowed her words, replaced by the crackle of the fire and the whisper of the wind. It felt like both a reminder and a challenge. Then, from somewhere behind them, seated against the log, Roy exhaled. "The only thing I'm making the most of is this ridiculously terrible campfire story competition." With a wave, Fiora cracked a grin, redirecting the group's energy. All right. Roy, how about you tell us about the Phantom of Miller's Hollow?" Underneath the banter, Quinlan felt Fiora's gaze linger. The warmth of it crept up his neck, sparking something that had long been buried beneath layers of guilt and doubt. He swept a breath in, his heart racing. "What are you really afraid of, Fi?" His voice cut through the laughter, serious and raw, a jolt that silenced them all. The surroundings dimmed, a blanket tightening around them. A waver crossed Fiora's face, chaos at odds with the gentle flicker of firelight. She hesitated, her hands resting in her lap as if weighing her next words. "Not being enough, I guess," she shrugged, attempting to reconnect with the playfulness. "I worry." "About me?" Quinlan pressed, ignoring the playful nudges of their friends who were now capturing this moment on their phones. "No, I mean, yes, but also about ourselves," she admitted, her fortitude faltering, revealing a vulnerability she often kept tightly under wraps. "What's happening to us, Quinn? Are we really here for each other? Or just playing pretend until the next terror shows up?" The air thickened. Voices softened as eyes shifted toward Quinlan, their expressions wrestling between empathy and concern. "I'm here for you, always." "You know that," he murmured, his heart pounding against the weight of the moment. The smiles of their friends had fallen away, leaving only the shadows of uncertainties. I'm trying to break free of my own ghosts." Fiora shared a glance with him, a storm swirling between them. A realization that the fight for survival was slipping into the background, overshadowed by something more profound in their connection. "I think together we can confront them." As the flames swayed, so too did their fates, intermingled in a lingering fear and a stubborn hope. The shadows danced at the edges, waiting, watching, perhaps even mocking. But in this moment, as fleeting as it might be, there was a bond rekindled, a flame amid the encroaching dark. "What's the plan now?" asked Roy, breaking the stillness with mischievous intrigue. Quinlan smirked, masking the weight of it all. "You'd better start sharpening your storytelling skills, because we're all going to need them." Scene 69, Facing Reality. The air surrounding Briarwood Hollow was thick with the scent of wet earth, the remnants of a night drenched in both rain and unease. Sunlight struggled to slice through the overcast sky, casting ghostly shadows that danced among the gnarled branches. Quinlan adjusted his backpack, the familiar weight a stark reminder of the turbulence they'd endured. The tension hung around him like a dense fog, heavy yet palpable, feeding the silence that had settled over the group. As they gathered themselves for the trek back, Fiora brushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes scanning the treetops as though looking for answers hidden among the leaves. The lingering echoes of their shared ordeal clung to her, stirring a cocktail of anxiety and resolute determination within her. "Any regrets?" Quinlan asked, breaking through the oppressive quiet. Fiora turned, a flicker of surprise in her gaze before it softened. "Only that we didn't make it out sooner," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. From nearby, Amelia, a newcomer to ghost hunting crew, tugged nervously at her sleeves, her usually bold demeanor diminished. "I'll never go ghost hunting again. Ever," she declared, the tremor in her tone betraying her bravado. "Good call," Chase replied, chuckling as he slipped his arm around Amelia's shoulder, offering a shaky sense of protection. "I mean, who knew adventurous meant daily brushes with death? Right? I thought this was supposed to be fun," Amelia shot back, nudging him with her hip. The playful banter was a thin veil over the unspoken tension, a desperate attempt to find light in the shadows. Seth, leaning against a nearby tree with a distant stare, interjected, "Expect the unexpected, folks. That's the rule, isn't it?" His tone was dry, a weight carried behind the humor as memories of their harrowing night tangled fiercely with his bravado. As Fiora glanced toward Quinlan, she caught the flicker of hurt behind his smile, an ineffable sadness settling in the depths of his green eyes. The kind of sadness that gnawed at the soul and kept one awake at night, questioning every decision made. "Quinn, are you all right?" she probed, sensing the turmoil beneath his cheerful facade. "I'm fine," he deflected, but the words fell flat amid the damp air. As they began walking again, the atmosphere shifted with uncertainty. Each step took them farther from the haunting and deeper into their realities. With their breaths visible in the brisk air, their past experiences mingled with the sounds of crackling leaves beneath their feet, amplifying their anxiety. Behind them, Kai was locked in his own internal battle. He had been a skeptic, and what happened last night shattered every belief he'd clung to. "I'm getting a tattoo that says 'I believe' somewhere very public." He chuckled, but the nervous laughter rang hollow, echoing through the trees as well as within him. "Maybe I'll join you," Lila grinned, though her eyes were far away, lost in reflection. "We can hold a tattoo party. Former skeptics unite." "Let's hope there are no ghosts associated with that idea," added Chase, light-hearted relief painting over their tense camaraderie. "I'd prefer to keep all my body parts intact, thank you." "Even the questionable ones?" Amelia teased, her voice warm with laughter, hoping to keep the encroaching dread at bay. Around them, laughter bounced between the trees, yet it was Fiora's eyes that stayed tethered to Quinlan. She drew closer and reached out, brushing her fingers against his arm, a grounding touch. "Talk to me, Quinlan. Please," she urged, her voice filled with warmth, her empathy invading the cold terrain between them. He hesitated, a moment hanging fragilely between them. Finally, he spoke. "Sometimes I wish I could change the past. What-ifs are haunting." Fiora's heart sank in understanding, the weight of her own indecision and longing reflected in his tone. "But we can't," she replied, her voice firm yet gentle. "Why not focus on what lies ahead?" "Maybe I can't help but dwell," he mused, eyes distant. Leaning in closer, she softened her voice. "Then let me help you carry it." As the sun began to pierce the clouds in hesitant rays, Fiora wondered if they could step into light, free from their painful memories, even just for a moment. "Let's just make sure we stand together," she finally concluded, a glimmer of hope sparking as they all walked deeper into the awakening forest. Quinlan offered her a tentative smile, one filled with an inkling of trust. "Together it is," he affirmed. In the next breath, Lila shouted, "Race you to the car!" And without another thought, their burdens faded momentarily amid laughter, freedom, and the promise of friendship ahead. Scene 70, a changed dynamic. The sun hung low in the sky, throwing a molten gold glow over the craggy rocks of the old quarry. Quinlan crouched by a splintered stump, sifting through his backpack as he pulled out the last few remnants of their supplies, a battered map, a flashlight, and a half-eaten granola bar. The wind swept through the canyon, carrying with it a chill that settled like a foreboding weight on their spirits. Why are we even still planning to go back there? Fiora crossed her arms, her voice firm but laced with uncertainty. Clenching her jaw, she looked over at Quinlan, who was oblivious to the storm brewing in her eyes. You think more ghost stories will fix this? We're not going to get anything done. This is just... Just what? Quinlan snapped, tension crackling between them like a spark against dry kindling. Some fairy dust and a friendly ghost aren't going to protect us from whatever we woke up last night. Fiora's shoulders slumped for a moment, and annoyance sparked again. We're not going to solve anything by staying locked in fear. I thought this was meant to be an adventure. She gestured toward the distant woods that were becoming darker by the second, shadows stretching like fingers across their path. We're in over our heads, and you know it, he replied sharply, shoving the flashlight back into the bag. Do you even remember what happened? Someone isn't coming back from this one. His eyes darkened. Maddie wasn't our fault, Fiora exclaimed, her voice resonating with the pain of that loss. The group had been small then, just 5 friends intertwined by shared dreams and tales, now haunted by a collective nightmare that echoed in laughter turned to screams. We can't let that define us, Quinn. You said we'd face this together. Did I? Or did I think we'd be out camping and telling campfire stories? His frustration was palpable as he stood, arms raised. This isn't just one of your usual ghost stories, Fiora. Just then, the air thickened, charged with an energy that set every nerve on edge as laughter rippled from the nearby rocks, disrupting their heated exchange. Elena and Marcos, 2 of their closest friends, emerged from behind a weathered boulder, Elena's auburn hair swirling like a flame in the dwindling light. Are we interrupting something? She teased, her usual lightheartedness a thin veil over the underlying dread everyone felt. Marcos's grin faded quickly, sensing the tension in the air. We brought, he began, revealing a bag of marshmallows, but the glint of mischief in his eyes wavered as he caught sight of Quinlan and Fiora. Is this a bad time? Always, Quinlan muttered, folding his arms as he turned slightly to mask the pleading in his eyes. The weather, shifting again, dimmed the light overhead, like a conscience smothering a thought, a reminder of the impending darkness. Fiora glanced at Elena, who allowed a moment of silence before stepping in. Guys, we all know this is serious, but there's no need to eat each other alive. How about some ghost stories after marshmallows? It might lighten the mood, she suggested, a warmth radiating from her gentle tone. Quinlan sighed deeply, releasing some of the pent-up frustration. And what, pray tell, are we supposed to say? Hey, ghost, would you like a marshmallow? Sorry we disturbed your beauty sleep. Marcos burst out laughing, the sound echoing against the canyon walls. I've heard worse pickup lines, he quipped, prompting Elena to nudge him with a playful glare. Enough with the jokes already. Fiora interjected, letting the tension rise again, but this time with levity. Not everything has to be funny, you know. This is serious. She drew her breath, emotions surfacing in waves as she stepped closer to Quinlan. And we can't pretend it isn't affecting us. Sure I can, he said dryly before softening. We all lost something, but we're still here. Their glances locked, both holding unspoken words, the ambiance charged like the air just before a summer storm. As Quinlan's gaze lingered on Fiora, he felt himself teetering between anger and affection, drawn toward her fierce spirit, yet desperately wishing to protect her from the danger of their nightmarish reality. He took a step forward. Fiora, just promise me we aren't leaving anyone behind again, she interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. The moment stretched, unbroken, until finally, Quinlan nodded. Never again. It was a fragile agreement, but in that tension, an invisible thread tightened between them, the lingering shadows seeming a little less daunting as they took the first step toward confronting what loomed ahead. Behind them, Marcos began to roast a marshmallow, a silent bridge over the emotional chasm that had just opened between their friends. The glimmers of laughter began anew, intertwining with undeniable fear, yet somehow reinforcing the unyielding bonds they had forged in love and loss. And as the wind howled around them, it became painfully clear that their journey was only just beginning, each step into the darkness, a test of their friendship and their lives. Scene 71, Waking Up New. The first rays of dawn pierced through the canopy of twisted branches like hopeful fingers reaching for the remnants of a long, haunted night. Quinlan sat on the cold, damp earth, his back pressed against a mossy tree. He rubbed sleep from his eyes, glancing around the makeshift camp. A few feet away, Fiora knelt, tying her hair back, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Do you think we'll see them again?" Quinlan asked, breaking the silence, his voice still thick with sleep. Fiora paused, taking a deep breath as a shudder danced through her shoulders. "I'd like to believe. Wherever they are, they're at peace now." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unshed tears. Behind them, Mara and Luca sat on a log, their heads bowed in quiet conversation. Mara's usual spark felt dimmed, her eyes reflecting a sadness that had settled in her chest. "What if the thing comes back for us?" Luca said, glancing nervously at the surrounding trees. "What if it wasn't finished?" "We'll find a way to stop it," Fiora replied, her tone firm yet laced with uncertainty. She turned back to Quinlan. "Will you really protect us, Quinn?" "Always," he said, though his voice wavered slightly. Outside their circle of friends, the world felt increasingly treacherous. The night had thrust deeper shadows into their hearts. From the other end of the camp, Tariq joined the group, rubbing sleep from his eyes, wrapped in a blanket. "Imagine waking up in a horror movie. That's us," he joked, trying to lift the veil of heaviness, a flicker of mischief lighting his brown eyes. "It is like the worst ghost story," Myra murmured, almost to herself. "One night all our fears came true." Quinlan glanced at her. "And we survived, didn't we?" Fiora nodded slowly, her gaze meeting Quinlan's. "Survival isn't everything, though. What about what was lost?" A silence fell, punctuated only by the murmuring brook nearby. Quinlan felt his heart clench. They had lost so much, and the memories of their friends felt fresher than the dawn itself. Suddenly, Fiora put a hand on his arm, her skin warm against the cool morning air. "I keep thinking there's something we're missing, some way we can honor them." "What do you mean?" Tariq asked, suddenly serious, looking around the group. "What if we tell stories about them? The good stuff, how they lived, make it a celebration of life instead of whatever this is," Fiora suggested, the fire in her eyes igniting something in the others. Quinlan smiled slightly, noting how Fiora could pull hope out of the depths of despair. "That's actually a great idea." As everyone began chiming in with favorite memories of their lost friends, the atmosphere shifted, laughter bleeding through the cautious grief. "Remember when Maria tried to scare us by pretending to be possessed?" Luca chuckled. "She just ended up falling into the campfire." Everyone burst into laughter, easing the tension. Mara leaned back, wiping away a tear, grinning. We were all like, "Oh, ancient good from beyond, save us." "I was genuinely afraid of that potato sack she was wearing," Quinlan added, shaking his head. "And the best part, she got the sack from the thrift store." "Which she bought at half price, of course," Tara quipped, and laughter erupted again. But as the sunlight began to warm their faces, Fiora's vulnerability returned, sneaking past laughter like a ghost. "What if we're wrong? What if they're not really gone?" Quinlan met her gaze, feeling the depth of her fear and longing. "Then we remember them, and we keep their stories alive. That means they'll always be with us." Fiora smiled, but it was soft, tinged with an undercurrent of sorrow. "And what about us? We've lost so much too. What do we become after this?" The group fell silent, each contemplating the weight of her question. The danger rested not just in the dark woods, but in the haunted corridors of their minds. Quinlan felt the spark of an idea. "We become stronger, right? Not just for us, but for them." The words hung in the air, and for a moment the past weighed less heavily. They could confront whatever darkness lay ahead together. Fiora leaned in slightly, her eyes reflecting both the light of dawn and unspoken promises. "Together," she whispered, an echo that bound them all in that moment. "Together," Quinlan affirmed, his voice steady. And with that, the sun rose higher, illuminating not just the shadows around them, but the paths they would forge, both in grief and in hope. Scene 72. A Journey Ahead. The early sunlight spilled through the cracked windows of the battered van, spilling restless patterns across the worn seats. Quinlan Vex perched on the edge of the driver's seat, fingers drumming against the steering wheel. His thoughts tangled between dread and a flicker of hope, both clashing within him like wild horses. The memories of their ordeal, each terrifying moment rushing back in haunting waves, echoed behind his eyes. Yet as sunlight pierced through, he could almost hear laughter, a haunting sound of what lay ahead. "Can you believe we're actually doing this?" Fiora Lisa's voice, bright and vibrant, cut through the haze. She was tucked into the back seat, enthusiasm bleeding through every syllable. A tangle of snacks and maps lay scattered at her feet, remnants of planning their escape from the old, crumbling country house haunted by the unseen terror. "Doing what? Running toward death?" "No thanks," murmured Lena, seated beside Fiora. Her arms crossed defiantly, resentment bubbling just beneath the surface. The bravado hid her insecurities. She had never been one for adrenaline-fueled adventures. This journey ahead sounds more like a journey straight to hell. Quinlan shot a glance at Lena through the rearview mirror, where shadows of insecurity danced across her face. "It's an adventure, Lena. We have each other." He swiveled in his seat, the weight of everything unsaid lingering in the stale air. "And we need to figure this out together." "Together?" Lena scoffed, her eyes narrowing at the reflection of Quinlan's soft smile. "Or is it just you two?" The unresolved tension between them crackled, pushing against the thin fabric of camaraderie they had fought to stitch together. "Come on, let's not do this now," Fiora interjected, her voice a balm. "We've all been through enough. We need to focus on how we move forward, not backwards." Even as she spoke, the uncertainty flickered across her face, a brilliant beam of light shadowed by doubt. When Fiora met Quinlan's gaze, a silent understanding passed between them, ignited by the remaining embers of their intimacy moments, stolen in the darkness of the fear that loomed over them. Quinlan leaned back just slightly, a world of memories shared in brief glances, breathing in the bittersweet scent of uncertainty mixed with the sweetness of possibility. Taking a deep breath, Fiora turned her attention to the rest of the group, crammed into the van's cramped interior. "What about you, Jasper?" she asked, hoping to shift the focus. Jasper, the self-described expert on all things supernatural, cast a wistful gaze out the window. "You know, there's a legend about spirits looking for revenge," he started, his voice dipping into a lower octave. "Lost souls shackled to the earth. Maybe it's their time to shine, calling all lost souls." "Or you just watch too many movies," interrupted Sarah, stifling a giggle, fresh braids framing her face. "You never know, we could be saving the world one ghost at a time. Always coming back to save the day." Quinlan tipped his head back, laughter bubbling up from a place somewhere beneath the heaviness they'd all carried. "But what if the ghosts prefer to be left alone?" "Better than being ghost food," Lena muttered under her breath, her voice barely breaking the surface. Fiora took a deep breath, sensing the vulnerability cracking the facade of bravado hanging in the air. Without warning, she turned to Lena, eyes glowing with warmth. "You know you're not alone, right? We all feel it. The fear, the uncertainty." The truth hit like a soft whisper wrapped in steel. Lena's walls shifted, barely allowing the vulnerability to seep through. "I'm scared," she admitted quicker than she intended, her voice softer, almost fragile. "I thought coming here would mean something more than this mess." Quinlan's heart ached at the honesty. "Then let's make it mean something," he said resolutely. "We're heading out into the unknown. The entities are out there, but so are we, together." As the van rumbled back to life, rising dust coiled and danced behind them, the lingering warmth of shared burdens hung thick. Fiora leaned forward, brushing her fingers against Quinlan's hand, an invitation wrapped in shared chaos, hope layered beneath their whirling fears. In its own way, the silence felt significant. Not just an acceptance of their vulnerability, but the promise of forging ahead, even if they were unsure what lay before them. "Let's make some ghost stories of our own," Fiora urged, stifling a laugh, eyes wide with mischief aimed at their shared future. "One's worth telling." And as they drove off towards the horizon, painted with both trepidation and possibility, the journey ahead felt like carving hope out of shadows, each moment a delicate step into the unknown. Scene 73. Fresh starts. The sun dipped low in a burnt orange sky, painting their secluded backyard in warm hues that flickered like fragile flames. Quinlan tossed a pebble at a nearby tree, its bark rough beneath his fingertips. "So, are we really going to do this?" His voice was light, almost teasing, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed the weight beneath his playfulness. Fiora adjusted her ponytail, glancing around at the circle of friends lounging on the grass, their faces illuminated by the fading light. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone almost sing-song as she tried to dispel the unease. She could sense the simmering emotions, the largely unspoken things tugging on everyone's heartstrings. "I mean, after everything, the ghost stories, the near-death experiences, we just move on?" Quinlan kicked the dirt, watching the dust rise as if it were their shared past floating away like memories on the wind. From across the circle, Jess chimed in. "Moving on sounds great, until you realize you're just pretending everything was normal again, like we didn't almost become a ghost story ourselves." The snicker tumbled out of her mouth like an old trick that missed the mark, her eyes darting towards Jared, who was suppressing a smile. "Why can't we just appreciate what we have?" Jared teased, nodding toward the pizza box as he pretended to put on a serious face. "I mean, look, we have pizza! Nothing says fresh start like greasy, cold pizza." Laughter erupted, momentary relief cutting through the heaviness of their shared ordeal. Pero, still kneeling near the snacks, jumped in with exaggerated solemnity. "Fresh starts and pizza, two of life's greatest mysteries." He shot an amused glance at Rachel, who took a solemn bite of her slice, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Now that's a thesis I can get behind," she said, raising her slice in mock salute. But the laughter stilled, a silence settling over them like a thick fog. Fiora leaned in, her eyes glimmering like those last rays of sunlight, keen to lighten the mood once more. "How about we promise to check in with each other? No ghosting, right, Quinlan?" His brows knitted together, caught between affection and something deeper flickering behind his eyes. "You know I'd hunt you down if you ghosted me," he said, but his gaze was distant, focusing beyond her, as if he could still hear the whispers of the entity that had nearly claimed them in the dark.